Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this Placemaking for Town Centres webinar. My name's Jen, I'm from the Design Commission for Wales. Welcome if this is your first time joining us for a webinar or you've been to lots of the past ones. This is part of a series that we've been doing specifically looking at placemaking in a town centre context. And our topic for today is particularly looking at children in town centres. If you have missed any in the past, you can go back and watch those. Just a sample of the ones that have come before. We've had one on share and repair in town centres, which was looking at how to bring a library of things and repair cafes into town centres. And the last one in May was a placemaking approach to green infrastructure in town centres. So really thinking about how do we build in thinking about using green infrastructure in multiple ways and to solve multiple challenges in town centres and the value that that can bring to biodiversity, climate change adaptation, but also to communities and places. The next one lined up is the 2nd of July. We've called that Placemaking for Pedestrians, and that will be informed by the recent update to the pedestrian pound research that Living Streets has done. So really thinking about how investing in town centres for pedestrians has benefits economically for your town centres. So we'll be exploring that with them next month. As I say, today is about children in town centres. Again, this is a big topic and lots of areas that we could explore within this. I think that it's important because perhaps we're in an era where children are less likely to come to town centres. In my youth, if we needed to go and do clothes shopping or get bits and pieces, we would go to a town or city centre with our parents and experience being in that environment. As retail has changed, obviously those habits have changed, and maybe there are less reasons for children to go or be taken to town centres. And what does that do to the connection that young people have with town centres and their experience of using them? But also really thinking positively about how can town centres provide for children? How can the presence of children in town centres bring life and activity to those settings? And so we're going to be exploring that particularly through the lens of organised play activities within town centres, and thinking about a joined up approach, particularly from local authorities about how to do that. And I'm really pleased that Marianne Manello is here from Play Wales to give us the background to this topic and some of the key things to be considering when we're thinking about children in town centres. And then that will lead hopefully nicely into Gareth's experience in Wrexham Council of doing some of this and the benefits that brings, some of the practicalities of that, some of the challenges of that as well. So lots of food for thought today, and it would be really good to hear from you in the chat or in the Q&A. If you've got any questions along the way, please do drop them in there because we will have time for Q&A at the end, and I will put those questions to Marianne and Gareth. So I will stop sharing my slides because that's the introduction over for me, and I will ask Marianne if she can share her slides, please.
Hopefully those are there. Jen, you can see that.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Giacomo. Thank you for the invitation to speak today about children and town centres. And I'm really pleased to be here to talk about the policy background. I am a self-confessed policy geek, so really happy that Jen is willing to indulge me in kind of 10 or so minutes of talking about that. I don't want to progress now. Right, so if you haven't heard of Play Wales is the national charity for children's play, championing every child's need and right to play. And we work towards a future where play is valued here in Wales for the crucial role it has to a healthy and happy childhood. And in terms of today's discussion, it is almost impossible to talk about children anywhere or childhood in any context without talking about play. It is such a central part of children's lives. So I'm going to briefly discuss the importance of play. Invite you for about 30 seconds to remember your own play. Jen set us off nicely with her memory of being in a town centre when she was younger. But if you can just think a little bit about some of the things you did when you were younger and playing and how it made you feel, just to kind of set the scene a little bit for today. I'm going to introduce the international and national policies for play in the context of planning, and then discuss some research regarding play sufficiency and policy. So the kind of brief memory of childhood, if you can remember where you were, what you were up to, and who you were with, and I suppose most importantly, how it made you feel. When we've done activities such as this in the past, the general sorts of memories that are evoked from playing and being with friends in a range of environments, many of them outdoors and many of them in the public realm, and particularly in a public realm that had lots of opportunities for exploration and creativity. Many of us will evoke memories of happiness, being excited, being adventurous, and having freedom. So, in terms of just leading into those benefits of play, we have recently published an in-depth literature review into which kind of brings together all of the evidence around children's play. The research was undertaken with a kind of a particular lens on Welsh social policy. And the compelling evidence, and I won't go into the details, but many of you will either remember your own childhood, or you may have children or grandchildren, or be neighbours in playful neighbourhoods. And the evidence reminds us that play is crucial for health and well-being. It helps children both physically and emotionally. It's well established the role that playing has in learning and development and helping children with skills such as creativity and problem solving. Play supports socialization. So I think particularly in the context of planning for play, when children are playing with others, they're developing friendships, breaking friendships, making friends again, having attachment with other people, but also supports them to feel part of their neighborhood and wider community. So in terms of access to town centres, we know that if a place is allows for children to play and to gather with their friends and socialize, it helps children to make those connections and develop a sense of belonging and feel that their presence is valued there. And all of that sort of those crucial deferred outcomes, if you like, longer term outcomes, builds resilience for children in the here and now. When children have plenty of opportunities to play, they are boosting their emotion regulation, building confidence, problem solving skills, and enabling them to cope with the stress and challenges. And that might be that life throws at us, and that could be everyday stresses and uncertainty, and longer term, more in-depth ones. So the importance of providing for play is important for all of us to consider in our work. So in terms of the policy which supports this discussion today, some of you will have heard of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. It is the most signed up to international human rights treaty in the world. And from time to time, if the committee that looks after that convention feels that one of the articles within it, so the right to play and recreation, is situated within Article 31 of the convention, there are 42 articles which relate specifically to children. If the committee feels that one of those isn't well understood, it issues, excuse me, further guidance to governments about how they can provide for those articles. In terms of, so we have a guidance which is called General Comment 17, which gives us a really nice definition of play and probably resonates with your play memories. And that play is a behavior that has key characteristics of fun, uncertainty, non-productivity. Really, really important words. And while the general comment talks about that evidence base of those important developmental outcomes, which I talked about a few slides previously, it also situates play in the here and now for children, reminding us that it is a vital part of childhood. General comment gives us some useful statements about play, Article 31 rights and local authority planning, and states that children's play is controlled and structured by children themselves. It's of most use to children when they can structure it themselves, and it take place whenever and wherever opportunities arise. And so if you have children in your lives, or you remember being a child, or you've observed children, wherever they are, children will find opportunities to play. They can't help themselves. It is a biological necessity, and they are driven to play. They have a naturally playful disposition. And creating time and space for that self-directed activity is as important as the provision of facilities and opportunities for organized activities. So thinking it when there are activities being held, how can we support children to make the most of that opportunity to direct it themselves as much as possible? The general comment also advised or suggested to governments that they consider introducing legislation around Article 31 rights, so including the right to play. So a bit of context, Wales became the first country in the world to legislate for play through its Children and Families Wales measure back in 2010. So for nearly 15 years now, there have been some play sufficiency duties as they become known here in Wales. And until recently, Wales was the only country to have legislated for play. Scotland has recently legislated, interestingly, as part of its planning policy framework. The Welsh legislation is situated within Welsh Government's anti-poverty agenda. So it is a broader piece of legislation. It asks local authorities, so the duty is on local authorities to assess and secure reasonably practicable opportunities to play across 9 matters. So you can see that breadth of knowing who our children are and where they are, looking at space and supervised opportunity and access to space. How do children get to and from space? The place efficiency assessments the current ones were submitted in June 2022, and the next are due at the end of this month in June 2025. So I'm really pleased Gareth was able to find time in his schedule to come and speak with us today, because he's in the process of pulling together all of that information for the local authority where he's situated. Now, just those 9 matters used to sit within a template, which was quite linear, and ask local authorities to look at the matters individually. And what we have done more recently is updated that template and put a thematic outlook on it. So we neither of the themes is more important than the other, and they're meant to be flow, but I've kind of highlighted the one which is kind of most I suppose specific for this discussion today. There's a theme that looks at places where children play. So local authorities are assessing places where children can play, such as open space, the public realm, and the traditional designated equipped places for children to play. Local authorities are asked to assess to what extent traffic measures either help or hinder children accessing opportunities to play and socialize, and also looking to the extent in which education and local development policies take into account the need to enhance opportunities to play, particularly opportunities to play outdoors. The guidance for the place efficiency duties reminds us that there are conditions which need to be present for children to make the most of their opportunities to play. They are spatial, temporal, and psychological. So while I appreciate today's discussion will have a very spatial focus, we need to remember that children also need to have enough time to make the most of the space that is available to them, and they need to feel a sense of being allowed. So the conditions are spatial, temporal, and psychological, basically having enough time, space, and permission to play. And in terms of town and country planning, the guidance recognizes that that is an important factor in providing spaces where children can play, and asks local authority to assess the extent to which they are the planning of the built environment, including housing and use of open space, recognizes opportunities to play, and to what extent the local development plan or any supplementary planning guidance associated with that LDP recognizes and addresses the need of children of various ages. So it's situated within that places where children play theme. So very quickly, a bit of the research. We have undertaken 4 small-scale research studies in terms of the place efficiency duties. And our researchers looked at it through something you may be familiar with. The good ASHA means good city, where he talked about the registers around what makes a good city. So our researchers kind of looked through the lens of what makes a good country for play. And the findings from that research identify that partnerships across departments have been a major achievement in terms of the relatedness register. That meaningful research with children is fundamental in terms of the rights register. That in terms of the reenchantment register is that opportunities for free association in public spaces are important to reenchant adults with opportunities to play, and also for children's opportunities to play. And in terms of repair and maintenance, what has been crucial to the success of place efficiency is keeping in good repair all of those policies which will support children's opportunities to play or not. So the key findings from that research is play is valued for its role in children's well-being in the here and now, as I've already mentioned several times, and that children's right to play is a matter of spatial justice. So place sufficiency should hold up our spatial habits to scrutiny and identify how they might help or stop children to find that time and space to play. In terms of what our experts say, when we've asked children through those last place efficiency assessments what was important to them, the majority of children report that they like playing outside in outdoor spaces. However, when we ask them what types of places they are, children in 2022, and this trend is likely to continue in our analysis for this, the next place efficiency cycle, is the place where children are most likely to play outdoors is either in their friend's garden or their garden. And so from Play Wales's point of view and through our colleagues and local authorities, we're not happy with that. If children have their own access to an own private garden or have a friend that does, that's lovely, and that enhances childhood, and a lot of our memories will remember playing in gardens. But we want to see children in front of their houses. We want to see them legitimately using the public realm for their play so that they feel connected and a sense of belonging. And back to policy very quickly, the ministerial review of play was undertaken several years ago. And on the back of that research for place efficiency, it had a theme looking specifically at spatial justice. And a steering group for the ministerial review of play looked at why and how we need to make our public spaces encouraging and welcome for play. And it highlights those key national policy drivers which impact on children being able to play more in neighbourhoods and public areas. Through that ministerial review of play steering group and analysing reports from children, we identified some of the barriers, the modern social trends which impact on children's play, and these will not be unfamiliar to you: increased car use, traffic use, speed and volume of traffic, presence of parked cars in neighbourhoods and in public areas, parental fears, but those are very often due to the speed and volume of of cars, or feeling that they don't know the people that are using the spaces around them, an increased participation in structured activities. And again, most crucial for today's discussion and thoughts is that children are out of place in the public realm. There is increasing intolerance toward children and teenagers playing and meeting up with one another, and that impacts on children's opportunities to make the most of whatever the public realm has to offer them. So some key points in terms of that spatial play and spatial justice theme. It is about children's fair and just access to what public space has to offer them. The steering group report recognized that planning policy Wales is central to spatial justice for children, and that aim of achieving well-being through planning shows a desire to move beyond formulaic and technical approaches to plan for play. That place efficiency is taking account of the breadth of opportunities to play rather than solely on what is planned for by adults. And I know we haven't spent a long time on play memories, but it is naturally spatial, and that presents an ideal opportunity for us to think about how spaces work for children or not. Just wanted to pull together a few comments from children, particularly older children, through a campaign that Play Wales undertook several years ago, just after COVID. But when older children talked about using public space, they talked about wanting to go to places where there were lots of people, just to see if there was somebody they could meet up to, join up and go around with them. And it usually ends up with a big group of them and having fun together. And friends and being together really features strongly in what teenagers tell us is important to them. On the downside, for many of our older children, they feel that some of the adults that they come into contact with judge them, assume they're up to no good, which in terms makes them feel unwelcome in space. I think it's really important that we recognize that these are real feelings that children have about their opportunities to be part of the widest public realm. So some quick wins in terms of how can we think about making town centers and or other the public realm more child friendly and therefore more play friendly is, let's change our phrasing from play provision or opportunities to opportunities to play. That immediately reframes what people expect you to provide and what what is I suppose contributes to children having a range of opportunities to play throughout that space. And let's talk about playfulness rather than play, and not just in terms of what children do when they're playing, but as an approach rather than a time and space bound activity. We have an opportunity through the emerging policy areas here in Wales to be playful, to have a go, to try out new things. So all of the information that I've quickly talked through today is on the Play Wales Chwaer Cymru website. So please delve in if you're interested in knowing more about any of the policy background. And before I hand over and finish, I just wanted to set the scene for Gareth's discussion is some of the key themes of that place efficiency research that I spoke about earlier. So how do we bring policy and research and implement it into practice? The key themes of the research have demonstrated that place efficiency has allowed us to maintain a dialogue across policy areas around play. In turn, that has fostered an ongoing community of practice and learning. So planners and play officers and active travel people all talking together to recognize children's competence and our responsibility. And what the place efficiency duties have enabled as well is an opportunity to experiment, an opportunity to say, what if? What if we try doing something in the town centre? And Garrett's going to talk to us in a moment about all the what ifs and things that they've tried out in Wrexham. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Marianne. That was excellent. Really helpful overview of a whole range of opportunities to think about children more in the work that I'm sure lots of people on this call are already doing, and bring that to the forefront of our minds, and to reiterate the necessity to do that. You know, it's not a nice to have, it's something that must be done, and we need to provide that space and time and permission for children to have those experiences of play. And how we build that into our built environment is critical. So a really helpful overview. Thank you. I'll pass straight over to Gareth then, who's going to delve into those opportunities a bit more and talk about what's been happening in Wrexham. Thank you, Gareth.
Okay. Is that okay? I'm assuming that's okay.
That's great. Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Well, firstly, thank you for inviting me to come and speak today. So my name is Gareth Stacey. I am the assistant team lead for Play and Youth in Wrexham. So very briefly, I manage a team that we run play schemes, youth clubs, play development and youth development within Wrexham. But as Marianne was mentioning about the place efficiency, I'm the lead for place efficiency within the local authority. I've been asked to talk to you about some of the work that we've been doing in Wrexham or have done in Wrexham. They're primarily staffed provision. As you can see, it's a city centre because we recently got, albeit a small city, we recently got city status a few years ago. I'll be talking about 5 projects, and it will be a whistle-stop tour. I'll try and keep it to 10, 15 minutes because I know we've got time for Q&A afterwards if you've got any questions. So 4 of the examples are purely staff provisions, and one example is unstaffed, but I'll talk about that a bit further. Thank you, Marianne, for doing all the heavy lifting on the place efficiency policy. However, I think it is worth lingering on this blurred photo. It looks fine on my screen, but it's gone blurred. Comment from the play-friendly guidance, which is kind of going to underpin all the projects today, in addition to other things. But I think the key thing is it's about everything we do is around partnerships. We as a development team are quite a small team, and we know we can't do everything alone. And what the beauty of the place efficiency duty is it mandates other departments, other organisations, adults, that they have a responsibility to support children's play and provide opportunities for children to play. And I think just by reiterating that within legislation gives us as a play development team a real thing to work with when talking to planners, when talking with transport, when talking with enforcement agencies and things like that. As Maria mentioned, in Wrexham we've been doing place efficiency for a while now. We've completed 4 and we're currently in the process of completing our 5th. What that's culminated in is, in terms of the local context for Wrexham, is we have 13 priorities for play, which all our work encapsulates that in some way or another. As you can see, I've highlighted in bold, I think there's 9 there. 9 of our 13 priorities are covered within the projects that I'm going to talk about. Some more so than others. However, I just think it's key to, from a strategic point of view at a local level, to understand that actually working within town centres, city centres, is a really important way in which we can increase the amount of children playing. So it starts for us, from the voices of children. Now, these comments are based upon a report we commissioned Play Wales to do around Wrexham Town Centre. And as I won't read them all out. As you can see, this is not unique to Wrexham. You could go to most town centres and children and teenagers will be telling you the same thing. Wrexham needs livening up, more entertainment, nice places to eat, free activities. There's not much to do. If there are more activities, we need to be promoting better. Public transport is expensive. That's another thing for Wrexham as well, is that we need to consider the outlying villages and the rural areas of Wrexham. It's not all about the town centre. There isn't much to do for fun. That old antisocial behaviour, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in one of our projects. Not enough for young people to do in terms of activities that are cheap. Not enough benches or places to sit. Fundamentally, not enough places for children to go. Okay, before I go into each project, I thought rather than talking specifically about each pros and cons and challenges, I thought I'd do it in a more general way, and we could pick that up maybe in the chat afterwards. So these are just some of the underpinning themes. As I mentioned, partnerships. All of these involved a partnership arrangement. It wasn't just us as the play development team. It was about activation of space. It was about that re-enchantment of an area, or re-enchantment of professionals or adults who work within that area, making it a space for children, permission, increasing tolerance, inviting and welcoming. That's where the staff side of it really works. Is we can have frontline staff to be inviting, to be welcoming to families and children. Fun and engaging, goes without saying. We're offering opportunities for children to play. It needs to be fun and engaging. Low cost. We don't, we operate on a small budget. We don't need to spend lots and lots of money to provide opportunities for children. Advocating play and playfulness. Now, this is a real big theme, is that helping adults and other professionals understand their role, the importance of play, and how they can continue to support playfulness, including parents. Free at the point of entry. Now, that's a must. Based on what children are telling us, based on the definition of play, everything that we provided needed to be free at point of entry. And then finally, it's about, as Marianne alluded to earlier, it's about creating time, space, and permission for play to occur, making the conditions for play to happen. Because we know if those conditions are right, we know from our research that children will play. So the first project, and sorry, I'll just reiterate again, the projects that I'm going to talk about again aren't unique to Wrexham. They happen across Wales. We replicated some, others had been replicated from us. It just, this is just our experience. So National Play Day. You may be well aware of National Play Day. It's the first Wednesday of August each year, every year. We've been delivering it for about 15 years in Wrexham. We deliver it right in the town centre outside the county offices. If you can see that top picture there, that's one side of the county building, the main office. And this picture at the bottom with the sandpit on is the other side. So it's bang right in the middle of the town centre. We take over the town centre for play on that day. We worked with over 35 organisations last year. So each local third sector or service area provides a free activity on the day. And the day is purely about providing a free opportunity for children to play in the town centre. It's not about giving out merchandise and selling your services. Yes, that can occur, but every organisation who comes to Play Day provides an activity. Last year, around 3,000 people attended, and fundamentally, it's about highlighting children's right to play. It's about recognising why play is important for children, and this happens. It's a 4-hour event each year. But the benefits of it are just really wide ranging. I'll just share a few pictures there. So it's a lot of using low cost resources, cardboard boxes, dam building, water slides. And what's really useful as well is for us as a team, as I mentioned, we're quite a small team. We're known for delivering of the play day. I might be speaking to a professional or a parent or somebody like that, and they'll go, "Oh, you're the play day guys," and that opens up that conversation. So it's really useful for us as a department, as a team in that respect. I've included a photo of the police in there who regularly attend. Again, it's about enabling professionals to come take part so that we can talk about tolerance for children, tolerance for teenagers being in the town centre, and understanding why it's important to them. Hemblast Street. Now, this was a project that happened a few years ago as part of the Wrexham City of Culture bid. It was it used to be a hippodrome years and years ago before my time, and it had been left derelict. As you can see from these photos, it was just a boarded up piece of land. Now the local authority acquired this back in 2021, around that time, and was reclaimed as a green space within the town centre as part of the Wrexham City Culture bid. There was a real recognition that aside from these spaces where we run play day, there was not any green spaces within the town centre. So working with ourselves and various departments in the local authority, they decided to open this up as a green space. We ran an opening event here. As you can see, it's far from the perfect green space, but what it is a space where children and families can access. Okay, we managed to secure some funding to deliver 2-hour weekly play sessions last financial year. And as you can see, yes, we've got the green space there, but it very often would fall out into the street opposite. You know, we would have children there, and that provided a sense of ownership for children and acceptance and tolerance for local business owners. At first, there were some, challenges. However, ultimately, over time, we had businesses donating to our project when we were running 2-hour sessions on a weekly basis. It's about creating those conditions for children to play. I'm going to talk briefly about two projects that we've done in Eagles Meadow. So it's a shopping centre in Wrexham. It's quite a large shopping centre, if you can see on that left picture. It's quite a large space. And then we developed a relationship with the centre manager, who was a colleague of ours within the local authority events team, and he moved over to manage the centre. So we had a really strong relationship as it was. And as you can see, that play area there, which is about 5 meters by 10 meters, was the only thing which catered for families that they didn't have to pay for. So, there was 10-pin bowling, there was a cinema, but that was the only piece. There's also a fountain there which children are unable to access. But what was really good, because we developed this, shared understanding, this collective wisdom with the centre manager, he recognised that and approached us about potentially doing some project work with him. And this is direct from the impact of COVID. Again, it won't be unique to Wrexham. A loss of shops, a loss of footfall. The manager recognised that if you want to increase footfall within a town centre, within a shopping centre, if you provide things for children, if you provide things for families, they're more likely to come, they're more likely to return. It's about aligning our priorities. Yes, he's got a commercial sort of aspiration, whereas we're slightly different, but about aligning those to meet a mutual benefit. So last summer, we ran a summer beach there. So it was open for 6 weeks of the summer. Every single day we ran some play sessions along in the beach. And again, it might sound quite simple, but it was a really great way of not only increasing footfall to the shopping centre, but also providing opportunities for children to engage. Pop-up play shop. So this is one of the projects that I'm really sort of proud of and excited about. Excited me. We utilised a vacant retail space within Eagles Meadow, and repurposed it for children's play. Again, this has been done in other local authorities. A partnership approach. So we worked with a third sector play provider who ultimately ran the sessions, and we as a local authority supported them with staffing and policy support. We delivered play sessions every Saturday for 6 months, but it was fully funded by the shopping centre. So again, another example of an organisation or a department outside of play supporting children to play. So the shop itself was this Sports Direct shop, which was no longer in use. As you can see, it's a prime location with a big space outside, and this was it inside. And I couldn't believe they gave us a unit this big to run play sessions from, which was fantastic. So we turned it into something like this. Now, as is the nature of play work and play sessions, this changed on a weekly basis. However, these are just some examples, and the picture on the right is chalking outside, again spilled out into the common area for children to play. Now this project was quite before my time, but it was an artist-led research project, recognizing that teenagers are often viewed in town centre as different to younger children, if we like. So for some reason, as soon as we see groups of teenagers, business owners, PCSOs, police have a different perception that they might be up to no good, shall we say, or doing antisocial behaviour. But when we speak to teenagers over the course of all our work, is they're after shelter, lighting, possibly Wi-Fi, and somewhere to sit and hang out with their friends. Which is why they always hang out at McDonald's and the bus shelters. But this project was about co-creating a space for teenagers within the town centre. And as you can see, designed by teenagers, it was left there for 6 weeks. It wasn't staffed. However, we worked with street scene and the maintenance guys to keep an eye on it, and the local police to ensure that it wasn't being damaged. And that was out for 6 weeks. And the feedback from the research was really positive in terms of it did give a space for children to go. I realise I'm running out of time, so I'll be speed up. So across all those projects, the key drivers I just wanted to mention again: partnership working, common understanding of what play is, a willingness to engage. So having that common understanding, a willingness of there's a willingness of other departments think we can make things happen, having the capacity to do so, including resources, and the Welsh Government Place Efficiency Duty. Again, having that legislation there is really, really useful. Challenges is funding, as it is for everybody, capacity, conversely to a driver, and then I've put perception. Again, in a few of the projects when we started, there was some queries from local businesses, but over time we worked with them to iron them out. Outcomes: increased understanding, increased footfall, more children playing, and increased tolerance. And then my final slide, I just wanted to touch on, yes, I've talked about mainly staff play provision. However, for us in Wrexham, the next step really is to, as I say to the team, is to think about how we can support children to play outside of those staff provision hours. In our play schemes, in the communities, I say to our play workers and our play development team is, yes, it's great for 2 hours, but outside of those 2 hours, are we supporting them to play in their own communities? And the same applies for town centres. How can we support children to play in their town centres? How can we use clever design, consideration of children, using the voice of children to create moments of playfulness? And I'm glad Marianne touched on willingness to experiment. That's a key part of it is, as a designer, as a planner, when we're looking at street furniture, does it have to be a standard bench? Can we look at ways in which it could be multi-purpose? Dare I say, seating that where children could skateboard on, as well as and again, involving play development from the start of any design process, or from when it's going to impact children, which is most of the time, I think is crucial, is conversing with play development colleagues to enable them to have input and be that voice of the children, because we've got a wealth of understanding. And I think that is it from me. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gareth. That was really helpful, seeing those examples, bringing the policy and the theory to life. I think that was a very good canter through, like you say, brief but really useful. And we can perhaps delve into them more if there are any questions. Please, if anyone's got any questions, put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll give those to Gareth and Marianne. There's a question here for you, Gareth. What impact has the annual play day had on general use of the public realm spaces around the civic offices by children for play on an informal basis throughout the year? So how has that day kind of influenced the use of those spaces beyond the day itself? Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so I think because it is the large green space in the town, I think it is used by children. I think there's a bandstand there which children sort of sit and congregate on. It is used if you go there on any sunny day. It is predominantly children using that space, so it is used. I can't say whether it was like that before play day, because that was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
However, what I would say is the tolerance for children being in and around by the council offices has certainly increased, and that's from me speaking to officers that work in that building, and anecdotally they've told us, oh, there's always kids out here and all. It's brilliant to see, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, and I imagine if those play days didn't exist, then that tolerance and that perception of being able to use that space for play may well decline over time, and so
Absolutely.
it's keeping that going. Yeah, Marianne, did you want to come in that as well?
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, I think one, kind of an aside benefit of having events like this in a place where there are more people going about their day-to-day business rather than in a designated country park or wherever where it's pretty much accepted that children will play is so there's benefits in terms of perception, but also there's benefits from the children's point of view in making these places more accessible and less abstract. So if we actually have children playing and socializing and being near council offices, it makes that those sorts of spaces more real for them, and they start to kind of feel part of the wider, I suppose, culture of of that of that area. So I mean, I think that there's that kind of an unintended benefit as well. That I wouldn't say that would be a driver in terms of why Gareth and his team would hold the day there, but I think it will have those benefits and children feeling connected to these more formal buildings, which lends itself to that bit about placemaking, the wider placemaking agenda, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. Very helpful. Another question here, what do you think are the biggest barriers stopping councils from providing social spaces for children and young adults in our towns and cities? Gareth, you mentioned there some of the challenges to that. Obviously, there's sort of the challenges that everyone faces around sort of funding and sort of working within the means that you have. I imagine human resource is a big factor within that, but are there sort of external challenges as well that you face? Yeah, if you both want to contribute to that, that'd be great. Marianne, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I think there's what we need to be. So we talked a lot about working in partnership, and Gareth has demonstrated where that partnership has of professionals working with one another has helped to encourage more children to use the town centre. When we talk about those conditions and those permissional psychological bits as well, is I think anywhere where we're encouraging more children to use space, we need to make sure that those messages of permission are communicated to the wider public, to the business owners, so being involved with town center managers or whatever they may be called in local areas, and also to parents. As I can remember being a parent and taking my children, into a town center or into a city, and you immediately go into a different realm of what you allow and what you don't allow. And so I think just being clear with communication alongside any spatial improvements, whether it is, putting chalk outside a derelict sports select, shop, or a piano somewhere or whatever, is just making sure that people understand that's what it's for. And I think the bit about the partnership as well, what was really interesting is when Gareth mentioned Play Wales was commissioned to scope the sort of the town centre in Wrexham as part of the City of Culture bid, is, for play workers and play work organizations. I think there are a few people on the call here today, making sure that we're listening to the needs of people working in town centers, in businesses. So for instance, play is traditionally messy and noisy, and it functions best on the edge of chaos rather than on the edge of order. And while that's beautiful in a designated space for play, it's harder in, people running shops don't want children covered in mud and muck to go, to go into their establishments. Restaurants will be the same. So I think we need to be mindful of that in terms of what we're supporting and offering children of their opportunities, and recognizing that those more messy sort of things might be more relevant and appropriate somewhere else. So it is about that maintaining a dialogue is, meeting people part way, but the communication is key to this. In any spatial improvement or development or refurbishment, we need to make sure that people understand why we're doing something and kind of what those parameters are. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you. Anything else to add, Gareth?
Yeah, I just wanted just to briefly say, I think also it's in terms of challenges, I think it's a historical thing. I think, it's typically been children play here or children play here. We design things, that's where children go, this is where adults shop. And I think it's not a wild leap to start integrating that a bit more. I speak to sort of colleagues in regeneration within Wrexham, and I know they've got priorities or funding priorities. So it's about embedding within those policies that place efficiency and around children. He said to me, he said, I need you in my office to tap me on the shoulder every now and again and just go, remember children, because he gets so caught up in doing what he has to do in terms based on the funding, based on his strategy, that he said, I genuinely forget and I'm just focused on how's this car going to get through and not around how are children going to interact with that. And then the other thing I would say is which I didn't mention in my presentation, which I forgot to be honest. It was about that experiment, about being playful within town centres, around signage and things like that. There's very small things that you can do that can make a town more inviting, more playful. You know, whether that be colour, road markings, as Marianne said, areas for chalking where chalk's left out. You know, there are small scale, simple things that can make town centres more inviting for children and adults.
Yeah, and I think we forget that a lot, don't we? I remember being a child and, a sign with a picture of a kite on it, like when you came around the corner and you saw that, and that in itself is something that excites you as a child, something with color and that's distinctive. So yeah, absolutely. Then and bringing that playfulness in. Marianne, do you want to?
Yeah, well, at the risk of offending dog lovers, we seem to have started to get it right for dogs in public spaces by having water bowls outside of shops, which don't cost businesses a lot. So I think if businesses can start to think, right, how can we make this a little bit more inviting for children as well? So, and yes, it's very flip comment, but I think it's something that that's very new, this bit about cappuccinos and all of those sorts of things. So I think, we need to, it's something new that people have grasped and kind of been quite comfortable with. So I think we should be doing the same for our human species offspring as well. Thank you.
Great. Question or comment here about bandstands. You mentioned bandstand, Gareth, and also the desire of young people to have shelter and somewhere to sit. Would it be appropriate, or could there be opportunities for rebranding bandstands to become youth shelters? I think this whole topic is hot, and in work that we've been doing with local authorities, antisocial behaviour, either real or perceived, is a particular issue. But I think you've both touched on this of children, young people just being in a town centre is not a problem in itself, and how do we change that perception, and perhaps how do we repurpose some existing spaces to accommodate those more. I love the idea of getting artists involved to think about how to shape spaces differently, and engage young people. So yeah, do you just want to say a little bit more about that, sort of addressing those needs and some of the negative connotations that come along with those things? Marianne, do you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, so I think I was certainly going to say when it comes to thinking about playmaking or placemaking for children is absolutely, being aware of what's already there and auditing it for use. As kind of Matthew mentions, having, we have structures that could be better used to bear that in mind. And again, it's for me, it's going back to that communication. And having strong advocates, and sometimes outside again of the play and children's workforce. So Gareth mentioned how supportive the PCSOs can be in Wrexham, the presence of that. And so if we have advocates in town centre security, for instance, if we have advocates in community safety officers, or in shopkeepers or town centre managers. So that could be and there's facilities at most local authority level for a play officer to be involved in helping people to think about play behavior, and just really framing it in terms of there is a real difference between play behavior and antisocial behavior. And I think we need to be very mindful of that. When children talk about antisocial behavior, keeping them outside of town centres, they're not generally talking about the behavior of their peers. they're talking about what adults might be doing in those town centers. And so we will have these tensions of, how do you make a place that's, that's teeming with pubs less frightening for children and teenagers. So, because that can be scary. And it's not seen as antisocial when you're the one partaking in that, but if you're the one watching it. So it's a bit about how we perceive one another. Getting children's voices through as well, though, is really important. And I think the biggest, for me is, none of us should be satisfied that children are saying in this day and age, they want to be outside more. But the place that's more likely to be is in a private garden. I don't think that's good enough. We lay a lot of blame at children's doors of that, they don't go outside enough, they're not active enough, they're not doing this, they go on their screens, they're inside. But actually that's not what they're wanting. They like all that, but that basically they do want to feel part of the places that on their doorstep and more further afield as they get older. I think that's the biggest thing too. It's, watching 4-year-olds jump in puddles is different than watching 14-year-olds jump in puddles. And Garrett's alluded to that as well. So making sure that we remember too that childhood goes right up to the age of 18. As a species, we have a long period of childhood to enable us to play and to work all of that out and to problem solve. And else.
Brilliant, thank you. Anything to add there, Gareth? It seems to be a bit of a hot topic in the Q&A at the moment, this sort of provision.
No, to be honest, I was going to touch on what Marion was saying about it comes back to that spatial justice stuff around, it's okay for a group of adults to be singing and shouting after a game of rugby down a street. That's perceived okay. But if it's a group of 16, 17, 14-year-olds, that's perceived as something different. And it is about having that tolerance. And going back to that question about teenagers, I think I mentioned it in the presentation. It is they want somewhere to sit, they want shelter, they want lighting, and possibly Wi-Fi, and maybe somewhere to go and get food. And it's as simple as that. And that is conversations we've had with thousands of teenagers over the years.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Conscious that we're running close to time, there's a request here for any specific play equipment used across the town centre. Perhaps, Gareth, if people are interested in following up with questions like that to you, would you be happy for them to perhaps drop you an email and get in touch that way? Would that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem.
Great. Maybe if you could drop your email address in the chat then, and that will be a way for people to get in touch. Similarly, Marianne, I presume people are, able to get in touch with you afterwards. Excellent, thank you. I think we've covered the majority of what's there. We'll drop a link in the chat to the next webinar, looking at the pedestrian pound. We'll also add a link to our YouTube channel, which where the previous webinars are held, and this one will be uploaded within the next few days. Thank you both very much for your presentations and chat. I found it really helpful. I think, Gareth's point about remember children, remember children, remember children. We all need those sort of updates, don't we, on particular topics. One comment about play and playfulness not being in the Placemaking Wales Charter, that's true. That it's not mentioned specifically. I think, it probably falls under the people and communities category, really thinking about who are your user groups and who are you designing for, but perhaps there's a bit more we can do around that to bring in those ideas of play and playfulness. But I think what's come through very strongly for me is the need to provide this, the wealth of benefits it can bring when you do think about children and young people and build that in. But key to delivering that is partnership working. So if there are people listening to this webinar who perhaps work in one department of a local authority and haven't yet engaged with their play sufficiency team or their play development team, try and join up those conversations and those ways of working so that we can tackle lots of areas of placemaking in a joined up way. So thank you very much, and thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you found it helpful, and thank you to our speakers today. Goodbye.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.